on the News Channel 5 network. This is OpenLine.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to OpenLine. If you've been watching the news lately, it's certainly been pretty depressing. It's been pretty tough. The events in Charlotte, the response to what has happened in Charlotte, and what all of that reveals about us as a country, and that we have a long way to go and a lot to talk about. And I'm happy to have that conversation tonight with Dr. Reavis Mitchell, history professor at Fisk University. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for the invitation.
You also chair the State Historical Commission. The State Historical Commission will have a say in many of the in many of the statues. Monuments. Right. What do we do with them?
Exactly.
And so as we discuss that, I want to move into that. But first, I just want to ask bigger picture. As a history professor, our history in this country is tough when it comes to race.
Yes, it is.
Where do you think we are right now?
We're at as crucial a point as we've ever been in, because matters of race and politics have been mulled together. The human reaction to racial questions often takes on violent overtones. These are not the days of nonviolent response. It's not nonviolence. And when people feel passion and when they act out in this type of charged environment, there's bound to be violence. We hope that Americans are, law-abiding, but sometimes law and passion, law and passion are not together. Law and passion sometimes aren't synonymous. They aren't the same.
I've heard it said a couple of things. I mean, I'm concerned by what you just said. I've heard it said that we have made great strides, and there's a section of people that realize that, and this is maybe their last stand. You know, have you heard that we've made great strides, and there's this group that's upset, and now they feel like if they don't, maybe they're on their way out, or it's a resurgence, or it's a showing of what's always been there. I don't know, but what do you think?
Or is it people who feel like they've been deprived of some entitlement, that race gives you entitlement? Is this the resurgence of white privilege based upon race in a multiracial society? What gives advantages? Is it an era where people who thought they were being described as deplorables are going to act out? The type of behavior we see, though, is deplorable on both sides in this country. With regard to Robert E. Lee, history is not being kind to a man who's a loyal Virginian and an American. Robert E. Lee left the U.S. military, where he was second in command, to lead Virginia's troops because he was called home. That's loyalty. That's what we call patriotism. But Lee has suddenly become the poster child for bigotry and intolerance. This monument situation, here monuments have now been the center, again, of bigotry and intolerance. But military monuments and statues are seen in the Western world, and they celebrate everyone from Alexander the Great to Napoleon. But it's how you interpret that, how you put a spin on it, which really takes the question of history out of it. It's not historical at all. It's symptomatic. It's very symptomatic. So if your flag or if your statue, I feel, intimidates me, what is the response that's appropriate? Should I be intimidated? Or should your monument be brought down? Who has the right? Because your monument intimidates me, do you have the right to physically intimidate me if I disagree? If for years I was supposed to be afraid and cower, and now suddenly I'm not afraid and I don't cower, does that make me wrong?
Right.
So it's a very interesting question for historians and for what I call social scientists, because that's really what this is, a social science.
So you bring up a whole bunch there. All right, we go to the monuments. What happened in Charlottesville, they were there was a group protesting the removal of a Robert E. Lee statue. And then it just led to all of what happened. What are you saying when it comes to let's say people here in Tennessee are talking about removing a Robert E. Lee statue.
Or Nathan Bedford Forrest statue in Tennessee. Not. Well, first of all, the group, when they made the application, they didn't say they were going to be nonviolent. They weren't asked whether they were going to show up with weapons. If you know the mode of operation for the groups involved, they almost thrive on weaponry and intimidation. Once they gave public notice, they knew there was going to be a response. And as I said earlier, in the 1960s, those other people coming out weren't following any treatise of nonviolence. They were coming, and they were going to respond. So it was an electric charge situation. What was the role of law enforcement? Do you let people clash? Do you issue parade permits where you know there's going to be violence? Again, who has responsibility there?
So when Donald Trump says there was violence on both sides, or bad people on both sides, what do you think about that response?
He was right. There were bad people on both sides. They really were. And I imagine even so some good people were caught up in it. But you can't give everybody out there marching the same attitude and the same reason unless they have a flag or a swastika or something intimidating. So as I said, we've mixed together lots of things. Heritage, race identity, racial intolerance, and it comes at a time when the black population says, finally in America, this is my country and my life matters too. What's happened over the years, lynchings, killings, police brutality, arrests, aren't right in America. That's not what this country is about. So it's a charged era. And then finally you have the interesting thing being, don't get upset with me, you have the role of the media. You have the role of the media.
Oh yeah, this is a fast, yeah, absolutely.
You have the role of cell phone communication, where people are communicating and other people are brought into it. You know, the situation in Tiananmen Square happened because of the rave. People brought down. A government, though, in Egypt was brought down because of mass communication. We have to suddenly know how to deal now with how to maintain the law and order in this new age. We really do.
So in this new age, and as a professor of history, as someone who studies history, are you optimistic or are you
I'm always
terrified about I mean, I look at everything and it's depressing. Like
I'm terrified, but I'm optimistic.
Now, why are you optimistic?
I'm optimistic because this is the United States. Because we have, unfortunately, in our history, gone through these periods of racial intolerance. But everything that happens, if it's political, is the will of the people. Someone said all politics is local politics. Nationally, what we see is a response to local feelings. People feeling like they can suddenly act out. They can be intolerant. They can close down borders. They can thrash ideologies. So, yes, but I'm tolerant because we have the vote. We have a high sense of morality in this country. You know, today the president's going to announce that we're going to travel again to maintain a war through 3 presidents to try to make things right in Afghanistan. Well, I hope if we're going to make things right in Afghanistan, we're going to also make things right in the United States.
Is this a period of intolerance? And when was it not? I guess, is this period that we're in worse than what we have seen 10 years ago, you know, years going back?
My wife, who's a psychologist, says, well, you're a historian. Compare this presidency to other presidencies. I can't compare it to other presidents. I can't. Generally, back in the 50s, we looked to President Eisenhower when the situation became bad in Little Rock. We looked at President Kennedy. We've looked at our presidents to be calming factors. This president has to assume that role. You know, one other point I want to make, people went on about President Trump's support for monuments, but I didn't see that. If you look at President Trump and everything in his administration, he's fascinated by generals. And these war monuments are of generals. You know, take some time and evaluate the person who's leading us and evaluate their leadership and evaluate to what extent you want to follow that pattern. But fortunately, We all have the great opportunity to grow and change. The other thing about the presidency, we've seen presidents grow in the presidency. So there's that optimism there that will grow, that a true national leader, not a leader of one race or a leader of another race, but a national leader will emerge from this presidency.
What does it say about the country that we elected our first black president, and then we've elected Donald Trump, who, as you have said, there's no historical comparison, but you just put those two side by side. What does it say that we've elected those two back to back?
There was a lot of pent-up political emotion apparently around the Obama presidency, but the Clinton failure wasn't that so much as, now scholars said, her failure to reach the same people that Obama reached, to bring them into her fold. The idea that just announcing and being there was going to do that. Politics is a hard job. Politics is a very hard job. You've got to know your constituents. You've got to understand why people feel as they feel and how you can empower them. I evaluate much of Trump's election as people who felt like they had lost a degree of power. He was going to bring back that job. He was going to bring back that industry. Many of those industries are never coming back. Coal mining is not coming back. Some of the automobile industry is not centered out of Detroit anymore. It's all changed.
So there are people that voted for Trump who voted for Obama. Yes. Obama was promising change, and Trump was also promising change. They wanted dramatic change. How much, and we've got to take a break. After this question, we'll take a break. How much of Trump getting elected do you think, if you want to assign any, was people that had racist sort of feelings? What sort of factor did that play?
They had frustration. They had frustration. Things have changed. This man of a different race is in charge, and I'm no better off. In fact, I laugh, people called him the professor-in-chief, Obama. But he could explain things so well, and he did. Now, to some people, that turned him off. Now we complain because last night the president announced a war strategy, but he didn't explain to us what it was. Now we're going to explain how we're going to win, how we're going to win a 1,000-year war that hasn't been won outside of Afghanistan. So yeah, it's the people.
All right, very interesting. All right, we're going to take a break. I want to come back. We'll talk about your role as the chair of the State Historical Commission and what that might mean as far as some of the monuments and that kind of thing. Let's talk about that. We'll take a break. If you want to call, there's the number. See it down there at the bottom. 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Take a break. Be back right after this.